These honored dead were the heroes of other times. Those were the times that tried men's souls, as Thomas Paine so aptly put it. Men and women throughout the 13 American colonies had to decide to go or to stay was the issue. John Adams put it this way: the die was now cast. I had passed the Rubicon. Swim or sink, live or die, survive or perish with my country was my unalterable determination. Were these poor Americans ready to confront the whole British Empire? Were they prepared to face down the Britannia that ruled the waves? Of course not. But young Thomas Jefferson insisted that resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Ready or not, up in Massachusetts, at Lexington and at Concord Bridge, the shot heard round the world had already been fired. Down in Virginia, Patrick Henry had cried in ringing tones, "Give me liberty or give me death." Fate had taken a hand. The Second Continental Congress had met in Philadelphia, and John Adams of Massachusetts had moved that they appoint a Virginia colonel named George Washington to head the Continental Army, an army which existed only as disorganized and green colonial militias. Washington had never really commanded anything larger than a regiment, and his military experience was very limited, a fact which he freely admitted. What Washington felt that he must do was to create some kind of order out of chaos. Discipline, he said, is the soul of an army. It makes small numbers formidable. It procures success for the weak and esteem to all. Early in the war, a young French volunteer with the American forces described what he saw. Grouped together, standing alone, he said, a few militiamen, poorly clad and for the most part without shoes, many of them badly armed. If there is one spokesman for the men who were the early American foot soldiers, the grunts, as some cynical modern realist has called them, it is a New England volunteer named Joseph Plum Martin. He is as close to an authentic Yankee Doodle as we are likely to get. He served in 5 campaigns from Long Island to Yorktown, and he knew the grinding poverty and filth of the plain soldier's life, if anyone ever did. While Thomas Jefferson was penning those memorable phrases, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal," Joe Martin, while staring awe-stricken at the huge British naval force riding at anchor in New York Harbor, was half naked, half starved, and scared half to death. When the Thanksgiving season of 1776 approached, Martin recalled that each soldier was issued a half gill of rice and a tablespoon of vinegar. A half gill is an eighth of a pint. Amazingly, Joe Martin never lost his sense of humor. Going without food for a day or two happened more than once. One night, he recalled, his supper consisted of, quote, "leg of nothing and no turnips," end of quote. Shoes were always a problem for the foot soldier. Even if the men had them, they were soon worn out by all the endless marching and counter-marching. and many a poor infantryman was reduced to wrapping his feet in rags. More than one observer of that period mentions bloody footprints in the snow. Even good shoes won't hold up under such endless punishment. I well remember some 60 years ago when I was in basic training, after a 20-mile hike with my feet blistered and swollen, my boots, which I had worn for 3 months through mud and flood, simply disintegrated. I have always had a deep sense of sympathy for those bloody footprints in the snow. It's easy to be patriotic when times are good and one has food, fresh water, and warm beds. Tom Paine understood that when he wrote, "The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of their country." Joe Martin was no sunshine patriot. Neither was Will Sudeth and the other revolutionary veterans who are buried in this hallowed ground. They were the kind of Americans about whom Crèvecoeur wrote toward the end of our war for independence. "The American," he said, "is a new man and acts upon new principles. Here, individuals of all nations are melted into a new race of men whose labors and posterity will one day cause great changes in the world." How amazingly accurate was this pronouncement. Those men who fought half naked and half starved from Bunker Hill to Yorktown helped create a new world, a new way of life. Those bloody footprints in the snow have led us on to new ideas, new opinions, new and greater truths. We here today can in no way honor these men and the families which stood beside them. What they did has honored them more than enough. And all that we can do here is to remind the world of today of the honor which they achieved by their sacrifice, loyalty, and perseverance. God has blessed these men from the officers to the rank and file. These men who served with George Washington and with Joseph Martin, who each in his own way did great deeds and small deeds, which altogether changed our world for the better.